What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. I am thrilled to be sitting down with Academy Award nominee Alison McAlpine. Her documentary short, Perfectly a Strangeness, takes us to the Atacama Desert, where donkeys, observatories, and the cosmos collide in the most unexpected way. Congratulations, Alison. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, after Cielo, your feature documentary from 2017, you have returned to the Atacama Desert, and it's easy to see why. And when you were there and you saw those herds of donkeys near the observatories, what made you think that this is the next story I want to tell? And how did you find Palomo, Ruperto, and Pile as the right guides for this journey?
Uh, um, I guess the final version of Cielo, not that it matters, was in 2018 because I changed various things. But but yeah, at the end of that, I had received some funds which I spent on Cielo, and it required me to deliver a short film. And so my question to myself was, what could I do? As you say, it was not hard for me to imagine doing another film in that area that's so extraordinarily beautiful, and otherworldly and cinematic in so many ways. But I just thought, as a filmmaker, I wanted to do something that really felt different. That, I had to be in that area, but what could how could I stretch myself? Well, one shot we never used in Cielo, because it happened quite frequently, is we go to the La Silla, where we mostly shot with the donkeys, and there were just a dozen donkeys sometimes, or a little less or more, but the juxtaposition of these donkeys with the observatory, these big, huge, giant, very expensive beasts of these domes, was fascinating to me. So I had many starting points, but to answer your question more succinctly, was the need to develop a short, and then many questions that were posed to me, like, how do these donkeys see this world? And that was one starting point in the film.
And building on that point, what did you specifically learn from observing them in the desert that might have influenced your filmmaking choices?
Well, just that I did research. There are many things that, I mean, I have a weakness for donkeys. And there were many things that fascinated me. Like we explored quite quickly. We went to an Acinerie, which is a donkey refuge north of Montreal. And to our eyes, donkeys' eyes look very, very dark. But we put a little bit of light on their eyes just with the macro lens. And in some of the eyes, it was like there were galaxies inside and colors. And so that was a beautiful, just a discovery for us. And of course, then it was, I wanted the near panoramic vision of a donkey. And so, exploring with anamorphic lenses. And we're lucky to get Hawk's anamorphics to really to give us for a credible deal for these lenses. So it was, and then talking to scientists. So really wanting to, one of the starting points was how to really create a non-anthropomorphic vision, the sense. Of course, we're humans and I'm human, but how can we make it really animalic? And so that was, a whole research and exploration about how to do that. There were other starting points, but that was one important one.
And as you were working, because you talked about, putting the light on the donkey's eyes, and it's the cinematography in this is so beautiful. I mean, we move from these sweeping cosmic scales, these extreme close-ups, and then you have the GoPro footage. Like, let's see this from the donkey's perspective. How did you work with your DP, Nicolas Canniccioni, and your editor to make sure you could, kind of craft this story from the donkey's point of view?
Well, first of all, just a little correction. I think it's because we put in one of our press kits or something, a shot of a donkey on a GoPro. That was an exploration, but we never used any GoPro footage
Oh,
because the
okay.
footage of the GoPro, I wasn't so excited about it.
Okay.
And maybe we didn't know how to use the GoPro properly. I don't know, but it was so digital compared to, using Hawk anamorphic. We were using cinema lenses and then the GoPro, and together they just didn't match for me. So,
Okay.
but I did tell my DOP, in terms of the first question with the shooting process, is we were just exploring with these amazing cinema lenses how could he be donkey? So I would say to him in jest, you be donkey. So we tried everything from, he did a lot of handheld to try to approximate the donkey's vision. Um, he rode a donkey briefly too. It was really just, we were just exploring various ways, to approximate that. And likewise with the sound is, how could we, I wanted to make the sound as important as the picture. And so how could we get the breaths and the snorts, et cetera, to make that feel like we were really in the donkey's skin, so to speak, And likewise with the editing is making cuts so that it was really, that we were really attentive. We were like these donkeys exploring this world.
No, and it's really effectively captured. I was actually wondering about that. You touched on it, the sound team, because this film is dialogue free, so we have to rely on those sounds that the donkeys make as they walk. And, it was really an interesting craft. And to that end, this film, it really, we are such a fast moving media landscape, the way we absorb everything that we look at. And here we have this film that really asks the audience to just slow down and simply observe. Was that a conscientious choice, or was that something that just happened out of the process of following these three subjects? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a lovely question. Um, I'm not sure because I love to slow down in my life and my work anyway. So there is a, perhaps people would say that my pacing is more meditative, maybe more in line with the donkey's pacing. Maybe that's where my weakness, the donkeys. But certainly it is playing on uh, the title "Perfectly a Strangeness" is really that, for me, that what that landscape conjures to me, in both in sound, or you could say silence, because there's a quietness there that's extraordinary, but it conjures this rediscovery of the world as if for the first time. And so that's really perfect. Everything is perfectly a strangeness, like a young child who's touching and tasting and feeling for the first time, or a young animal. So yeah, was the donkeys are a wonderful way to do that, to explore just them scratching or them sniffing something, or how do they see this sky too? Apparently, donkeys, like cats and dogs, have this retina on them that they apparently see the night sky better than we do. So, I mean, that's an imaginative leap, of course, but.
Well, and I think your background as a poet really lends this, like, this really is a beautiful visual poem um to take in. And the other character we have, Ben Grossman, your composer, he crafted this haunting and elemental and beautiful sound. And I read that, he's a big improviser and he plays the hurdy-gurdy and the bells and the different pieces. How early in the edit did you bring him in, and how early did you feel that the score needed to speak for the film emotionally? And did that work change the rhythm or the edit or how you pieced it together when you worked with him?
Yeah, thank you. I am for all that. But yeah, it was a it was a lovely process working with Ben. And I don't think the when I presented it to him, the edit was, was picture locked, basically. We did have a little tiny bit of leeway, but we really didn't change that. But he was just a really, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but it was a delicate, and he said a lovely challenge for him, because I wanted the music to feel improvised. And of course, as soon as music is, put anywhere, as you know, it's fixed in
Right.
time, right? And so, but I didn't want a composer who came with a big composer's hat on. I wanted the observational sound and the music. You not to know which one was which at the beginning, and then the music's, as gradually sort of takes its space, and particularly when the observatory opens. So to answer more succinctly your question, it was just a process of really us talking and him experimenting, to try to create a palette of sounds that didn't have associations of, for instance, he sometimes he'd try a certain sound and it sounded like the donkeys might be entering in kind of a ghosty observatory and something horrible would be happening. And we didn't want
Right.
that, of course. So it was really just finding this open, fresh sound. And that's why I also loved. And so that was just experimentation. And then, but we also want to feel like something's happening. There's this conversation between the donkeys and the observatory, that's happening. So it was, yeah, just experimentation. And I loved his choice of instruments too, because they're not typical choices of instruments for films, right? And so and just so in case you don't know, all those all the shots within the observatory are all Ben and Julie, the tubist, and mostly Ben, but there's no observatory sound. He listened to some of them, but so it's all all
Wow.
all invented sounds.
That's beautiful. And now, looking at the recognition that Perfectly Strangeness has received from the Academy and the other festivals that it's played, how has this journey been for you for such a quiet, contemplative film to be on this journey now to the Oscars?
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild and wonderful, and so many surprises. I mean, we did this. What's wonderful, I've just had an amazing team in Quebec and Chile, and it's mostly an Arts Council funded film. It looks much more than that because people gave so much to it, not just my creative team, but companies in Quebec mostly, but Chileans gave a lot too. So it's I guess what I'm trying to say, it was we really did this film for the pleasure of exploring and creating hopefully a piece of cinema that really stays with you. And so that the fact that we got into Cannes, and that it continues to travel, and that it's in nomination for an Oscars is just wonderful, but a complete surprise. I mean, we're independent. We have no studio backing. We're lucky that Criterion's releasing it in March, so
Mhm.
that's wonderful. But it's very much not. Yeah, it's fun, and it's quite wild to be the out of the box independent in this and an enormous honor, really.
And as a filmmaker, as you've worked on Perfectly a Strangeness, thinking about Cielo, and preparing for what you are going to work on next, I love to ask this question of filmmakers when I have the opportunity. What would you say is one best practice or method that you take with you from project to project? And what's a learning curve that you try to avoid?
Hmm. I guess to try to answer succinctly would be just that openness of being really, yeah, just being 100% present. It's all very simple to say, but 100% present, no matter how exhausted you are, and and be willing to adapt immediately to what's happening before your eyes, whether it's the change of light, whether it's the change of weather, whether it's your subjects, even if they're donkeys that are exhausted and they're not going to move, is just that flexibility of being completely present and alive to every moment really is the best, rather than coming with any kind of fixed ideas, which aren't going to work if, much of the time. So, and it's also just the huge pleasure is, but I've been lucky with that, but is working with a team that you trust enormously that can challenge you and ask you questions along the way. Is I'm so grateful for the creative teams I've been working with.
Beautifully said. And just to wrap it up, when audiences leave this film, what are you hoping lingers with them? Is there a certain image or a question or feeling? What do you want them to take away after they've spent this 15 minutes in your world?
I guess what's been touching to me is people see this film, people that sort of enter the film because it's sensorial, as you know, and very cinematic. So I think um, if you're willing to just leap into its form, uh, then I love the fact that people have different interpretations, and they often say they want to see it again, which is one of so it's really I want to, I'm trying to answer your question, have people have space to imagine, space to breathe, space to, if they're so inspired, if it resonates with them, space to see it again, like you would re-see or want to relive a poem or a painting that you want to touch, and so that's, yeah, I think there are many levels and breathing space in this film to hopefully yeah, to inspire people, evoke various um, one's imagination and one's yeah, there. How's that?
Thank you so much. And Alison, congratulations again on the Oscar nomination. Such a well-deserved honor. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. Perfectly Strange. It's beautiful, it's thoughtful, it's meditative. And to those of you watching this at home, Perfectly Strangeness will be coming, yes, to the Criterion site in March, but it's also coming to theaters this coming weekend as part of the Oscar nominated documentary shorts program. Presented by Roadside Attractions. So you can check your local listings and go support all of these incredible filmmakers. Alison, again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.